Earth's ruthless retaliation leaves the Galactic Council speechless. The distress beacon from Vega Colony 7 had been transmitting for 11 hours before anyone outside Earth's communication network picked it up. By that point it did not matter. There was no one left to save. The Hekari had not come to fight. That was the thing that made it worse. They had not sent warships bristling with weapons and battle-hardened crews looking for a conflict. They had sent 3 mining vessels and a single escort frigate, and they had moved through Vega Colony 7 the way a boot moves through an anthill. Not with anger, not with strategy, just with the complete and total indifference of something that does not consider what it is stepping on to be worth the effort of going around. The colony had 9,000 people, miners, engineers, their families, a school with 200 children, a medical clinic that had just taken delivery of new equipment, a bar where the night shift argued about sports results from back home on Earth. The Hekari had wanted the asteroid belt that Vega Colony 7 sat at the edge of. The colony was in the way, so the Hekari removed it. They filed a mining rights claim with the Galactic Council 3 days later as if nothing had happened. They listed the asteroid belt's mineral composition in clinical detail. They did not mention the colony. The council clerk who processed the initial filing did not ask. The first human official to arrive at Vega Colony 7 was a survey officer named Lieutenant Don Ferris, who had been redirected from a routine mapping assignment when the beacon stopped transmitting. He brought his ship into visual range, looked at what was on his screen, and sat very still for almost a full minute before he sent his report back to Earth. His report contained coordinates, timestamps, weapons analysis, and casualty estimates. It contained sensor logs of the Hekari vessel's approach and departure vectors. It contained photographs. He sent the report, and then he sat in his cockpit with the colony on his screen, and he did not look away from it. He felt that someone should look at it. He felt that turning away from it would be a small betrayal of every person whose name he would never know. Admiral Renée Wolfe received the report during a logistics review meeting on Earth Station Meridian. Her aide entered the room and placed a tablet on the table in front of her without a word. Wolfe looked at the tablet. Then she excused herself from the meeting. She went to her office and read every page. When she finished, she looked out the viewport for a long time. The curve of Earth was visible below, blue and white and completely ordinary. Somewhere down there, families were going about their day with no idea that 9,000 people who had woken up that morning the same way were now gone. She pulled up her fleet status. She had been told 3 weeks ago that a deep space exercise was scheduled for the coming month. She had 48 ships assigned to it. She sent a message to the exercise coordinator that the exercise parameters had changed and that new orders would follow within the hour. She wrote the new orders herself. She did not send anything to the Galactic Council. She did not contact Earth's diplomatic office. She did not issue a statement or request a hearing or file a protest. She had looked at the photographs from Don Ferris's report, and she had decided, very quietly and very completely, that she was done with those processes for the next little while. The fleet was underway before news of the Vega Colony 7 attack had fully spread through the galactic networks. At the Galactic Council station, a diplomat named Petra Luz received the news at the same time as everyone else and spent an hour reading every document Ferris had filed. Then she packed a small bag, went to the council chamber, and took her seat. She did not know exactly what Wolfe was doing. She had a general sense of it. She had worked with Wolfe before. She decided her job for the foreseeable future was to sit in that chamber and say as little as possible as precisely as possible for as long as it took. The Hekari observer arrived at the council station 2 days after the news broke, full of procedural confidence, ready to defend the mining claim. He had lawyers. He had historical precedent documents. He had 3 different arguments prepared for 3 different scenarios. None of his scenarios included what was actually happening. He did not know yet that 48 Earthships were already traveling through space in the direction of Hekari territory, at a speed that suggested no particular hurry and no possibility of being stopped. He did not know about Lieutenant Don Ferris, still sitting in his cockpit at the edge of the Vega asteroid belt, still watching, because someone needed to. He sat down in the council chamber and organized his documents and waited for the hearing to begin. Petra Luz looked at him from across the chamber. She did not look angry. She looked like someone who already knew the end of the story and was simply waiting for everyone else to catch up. The Hekari observer's name was Counselor Drev, and he had been in galactic politics for 30 years, and he had never once lost a resource hearing. He was good at resource hearings. He was good at all hearings. He had a gift for making complicated things seem simple and simple things seem complicated depending on which direction served him better. He had the confidence of a species that had been members of the Galactic Council for over 2 centuries, and had learned in that time that the Council rewarded patience and paperwork above all else. He stood before the chamber on the second day and presented the Hekari mining claim with the smooth precision of a man who had done this before. He cited 3 precedents. He produced mineral surveys dating back 40 years. He noted, with practiced regret, that the colony at Vega 7 had been in a disputed resource corridor, a characterization that would have surprised the 9,000 people who had lived there, none of whom had ever heard that description applied to their home. He expressed, in careful and measured language, that the Hekari were open to discussing compensation for the disruption caused to the colony's residents. Petra Luz, sitting in the human delegation seat, wrote one word on her notepad. Disruption. She underlined it twice, then she put the pen down. Speaker Hale asked her if Earth wished to respond to the Hekari presentation. Petra stood up. She said that Earth had reviewed the Hekari mineral survey documents and found them thorough and professionally prepared. She said that Earth had also reviewed Lieutenant Ferris's sensor logs and found them equally thorough. She said that Counselor Drev had used the word disruption to describe what happened to Vega Colony 7. She said she would like to enter the photographs from Lieutenant Ferris's report into the council record so that the term could be evaluated in context. Drev objected that photographs were not standard evidentiary material. Petra said she understood that. She said she was not presenting them as evidence. She said she was presenting them as context. Speaker Hale allowed it. The photographs were displayed. The chamber went quiet. Petra said nothing. She let the chamber be quiet. She had learned a long time ago that some arguments were better made by silence than by words. After a long moment, she said that Earth was not going to be filing a formal response to the Hekari mining claim at this time. Drev looked at her with the first expression that was not smooth confidence. He asked what that meant. She told him it meant exactly what it sounded like. She told him Earth had its own process underway and that the Council would be kept informed of developments. Hale asked what process she meant. Petra said she was not at liberty to describe it in detail at this stage. She sat down. The chamber spent the rest of the session debating what she meant. Drev submitted 3 requests for clarification through official channels. Earth's delegation returned polite acknowledgments to each one. The acknowledgments said nothing. On the 3rd day, someone on a Hekari long-range sensor station filed an unusual traffic report. 48 ships, human registry, traveling on a heading that would bring them into Hekari sensor range within 4 days. No broadcast identification. No flight plan filed. No response to hails on any standard frequency. The report went up the Hekari military command chain and caused a long and anxious meeting. The outcome of the meeting was a decision to double the patrol density around their 3 primary mining installations. It was also decided to send a diplomatic message to Earth requesting clarification on the fleet's purpose. Earth's diplomatic office received the message. A clerk logged it as received. No reply was drafted. Aboard the flagship, Captain Dura stood at the tactical display and watched the Hukari patrol activity increase in real time as their sensors came into range. He noted that the Hukari were now watching them. He noted that the Hukari were moving additional ships into position around their installations. He went to find Wutsulfa. She was in the briefing room looking at a map of the 3 primary Hukari mining installations. She had annotated it in her own hand. Notes on weapon system ranges, garrison sizes, evacuation pod capacities. Wus told her the Hukari knew they were coming. She said good. He asked if that changed anything. She looked at the map for a moment. She picked up her pen and added one more note on the installation labeled Primary Site 1. The note said, 12 minutes. Wus looked at the note. He understood what it meant. He went back to the bridge and told the crew to begin pre-engagement system checks. The crew ran through the checks without being told twice. Outside the ship in the dark between star systems, the fleet moved at cruise speed the way a tide moves. Not fast, not dramatic, just constant and in only one direction, and nothing had ever made a tide go back by asking it politely. 3 days out, Dunfurus was still at Vega Colony 7. He had been relieved twice. He had told both relief officers he would leave when he was ready. He had not been ready yet. He was still watching the coordinates where the school had been. He thought somebody should be watching. On the 4th day, he finally turned his ship around and started the journey back. He did not feel ready. He had decided that ready was not a thing he was going to feel for a long time, and that staying there would not change that. He set his autopilot and went to sleep. He dreamed about nothing, which was the best he could hope for. Primary Site 1 was the largest Hukari mining installation in the sector. It was not a beautiful structure, but it was an impressive one. 3 kilometers end to end, anchored to a dense metallic asteroid, with 12 active extraction shafts running deep into the rock. It had been operating for 19 years and had produced more refined ore in that time than any other installation in Hukari space. It was also, according to the operational logs that Earth's Intelligence Division had acquired through channels that no one was going to discuss in a formal setting, the installation that had supplied the 3 mining vessels that went to Vega Colony 7. Not a military installation, not a weapons platform, a mining operation. Wutsulfa had thought carefully about that distinction. She had thought about it for 3 days of travel, and she had come to a conclusion that she was comfortable with. Primary Site 1 had sent those ships. The ore from Primary Site 1 had funded the escort frigate. The resource pressure that Primary Site 1's production goals created had been the reason someone in Hukari Command had looked at Vega Colony 7 and seen an obstacle instead of a home. The line between that installation and 9,000 dead people was not a straight line, but it was a line, and Wutsulfa could see every point on it clearly. She gave them 15 minutes, 3 more than she had given Ara Point. She opened the same broad civilian frequency and spoke in plain language. She told them who she was. She told them what she wanted. She told them the clock was running. The Hukari installation commander's response came in 40 seconds. He told her she had no authority in this space. He told her Earth would face the full weight of council law. He told her his defensive systems were online and his reinforcements were inbound. Wutsulfa thanked him for the information and told him the clock was still running. At 9 minutes, evacuation pods began launching from the installation's lower sections. A steady stream of them, small white capsules scattering into the dark. At 14 minutes, the pods had stopped, not because everyone was out, because the pods were full and there were not enough of them. Wutsulfa sent a second transmission. She told the installation commander she could see that they had run out of pods. She told him she was extending the window by 8 minutes, and that he should use every shuttle and support craft remaining to continue the evacuation. There was a pause on the other end. The installation commander asked why she was extending the window. She told him she was not interested in killing miners. She told him she was interested in making a point. She told him those were two different things, and she intended to be precise about it. The shuttles launched, more people got out. At the end of the extended window, Sulfa checked the numbers. The installation's registered crew complement was 412. Sensor analysis of the evacuation traffic suggested approximately 360 had made it out. She thought about the remaining 52. She opened the channel one more time. She said she was going to give them 5 more minutes, and that she expected everyone still aboard to be on a shuttle. Wuss came to stand beside her. He said quietly that they were already 9 minutes past the original window. He was not telling her to stop. He was making sure she knew the time. She told him she knew the time. 5 minutes later, 2 final shuttles departed the installation. She waited until the shuttles were at safe distance. Then she gave the order. Primary Site 1 took 11 minutes to destroy. Sulfa's weapons officers worked methodically, disabling the extraction infrastructure before taking down the structural core. She did not want random debris impacting anything in the nearby shipping lane. She did not want the asteroid itself to fracture in an uncontrolled way. She wanted a clean removal, not a mess. When it was over, the asteroid was still there. The installation was gone. She moved to the second installation immediately. At the second one, she was recognized before she even sent a transmission. They began evacuating on their own. She watched the pods launch in a rapid, disorganized stream that suggested genuine fear, and she decided that was appropriate. She gave them 20 minutes anyway. At the Galactic Council station, the news arrived in fragments. Sensor reports from HFY military stations, distress signals from evacuated crews, a scrambled broadcast from Installation 2's commander that someone had put on the open network. The chamber filled. Druv was there, his composure significantly reduced from earlier in the week. He demanded Earth's fleet be ordered to stand down. He demanded sanctions. He demanded consequences. Petra Luz sat in her seat and waited. Hull called for order and asked Petra if Earth had any comment. Petra said yes. She said she would like to formally note that all 3 installations being visited by Admiral Sulfa's fleet had registered civilian evacuation warnings before any action was taken, and that Earth had taken active steps to extend evacuation time to reduce casualties. She said she wished to contrast this with the procedures followed by the HFY vessels at Vega Colony 7, which had issued no warning of any kind. She said Earth found the contrast instructive. Druv started to respond. Petra sat down, which meant she was done talking, and the council rules meant the floor returned to the speaker, and Hull exercised her right to call recess before Druv could finish his sentence. In the corridor, species who had been quiet all week began having very loud private conversations. The HFY military response arrived at the 3rd installation 17 minutes after Sulfa did. 60 warships. They had pulled them from 4 different patrol groups and pushed them hard to get there in time. The commanders aboard those ships had been told to stop the humans from destroying the installation. They had not been told much else because there was not much else to tell. No one in HFY Command had a plan for this scenario because no one in HFY Command had believed this scenario was possible. 60 against 48. The HFY commanders looked at those numbers and felt reasonably confident. Sulfa looked at those numbers and told Wuss to position the fleet between the installation and the incoming HFY ships. She was not going to let the installation become a shield. She was not going to let anything become confused about what was happening here. She also quietly noted that the installation had not yet been evacuated. She opened the civilian frequency again and told the installation's crew that there was about to be a battle nearby, and that they should leave immediately and that Earth would not fire on evacuation craft. They left quickly. The battle that followed lasted 3 hours and 14 minutes. The HFY fought well. Wolf had not expected otherwise. They were not inexperienced, and they were not cowards, and they had a numbers advantage, and they used it with discipline. They tried to pin Earth's fleet against the asteroid, and they tried to split the formation, and they tried a flanking approach through the debris field on the installation's far side that was actually quite good and would have worked against most opponents. It did not work against Wolf's fleet for the same reason most things did not work against Wolf's fleet. Earth's ships did not fight like a fleet. They fought like a single coordinated organism where every ship knew at every moment what every other ship was doing and adjusted in real time. The HFY flanking maneuver arrived to find that the formation had already rotated to face it before it completed. The pinning attempt dissolved because the ships being pinned simply stopped trying to escape and instead turned directly into the HFY advance, which no one had expected them to do. There is a significant difference between a force that fights not to lose and a force that fights to end the fight. Wolf's fleet was the second kind. By the end of the third hour, 19 HFY ships were destroyed, 22 were retreating, and the remaining 19 had signaled surrender. Earth had lost 3 ships and had 11 with significant damage. Wolf recorded the losses in her operational log with the same precise handwriting she used for everything. 3 names, 3 crews. She would write longer entries about each of them later. She always did. She turned her fleet to the third installation and finished what she had come to do. Then she set course for the HFY home system. Not at assault speed, not in attack formation. Standard cruise, ships in a loose traveling pattern, the way a fleet moves when it is going somewhere rather than preparing to fight someone. It was a deliberate choice. She wanted the HFY to look at the sensor feeds and have to think about what they were seeing. She stopped at the outer edge of their home system's approach corridor and requested a communication channel with HFY High Command directly. Not through the Council, not through diplomatic intermediaries. Direct. It took them 40 minutes to decide to answer. When they did, she spoke for 3 minutes. She told them she was not there to negotiate because there was nothing to negotiate. She told them the 3 installations were gone and that they were gone because they were connected to Vega Colony 7, and Vega Colony 7 had 9,000 people in it. She told them she wanted them to think about that number. 9,000. Not a strategic asset, not a political symbol. 9,000 individual people who got up that morning and did not know it was the last morning they would have. She told them she did not know the names of every person at Vega Colony 7. She told them she was going to learn them. She was going to read every name in the full casualty report, and she was going to remember as many as she could. She said this not to threaten them, but because she wanted them to understand the scale of what they had treated as a minor administrative matter. She told them that if any human settlement, colony, station, outpost, research platform, any place where human beings lived was ever again treated the way Vega Colony 7 was treated, she would come back, and she would not stop at the approach corridor. She closed the channel. She sat in her chair for a moment and then asked West to bring her the full casualty list from Vega Colony 7, the complete one, every name. He brought it to her. She began at the first name and read slowly. She did not rush. She had nowhere to be right now except here, reading these names, because someone had to and she had decided it would be her. Outside the viewport, the HFY home world turned slowly in its orbit, lit by its star, ordinary and alive. She read until she could not any more. Then she marked her place and went asleep. In the morning she would read more. She read for 2 days. She finished the list on the morning of the 3rd day, and then she gave the order to turn the fleet around and go home. What broke Counselor Drev was not the loss of the installations. It was not the battle. It was not the image of Wolf's fleet sitting outside the Hikari home system while High Command looked at their weapon systems and decided, collectively, not to use them. He had expected all of those things on some level, in the way that a person braces for impact before a crash. He had flinched, but he had not broken. What broke him was a small thing. It was the footage circulating quietly on the networks of Admiral Wolf sitting alone in her briefing room with a printed document in her hands. Someone on her crew had leaked it, not maliciously. They had leaked it the way people share things they cannot hold alone. The footage was grainy. It showed her reading, slowly, turning pages, sometimes stopping, sometimes going back. The casualty list, 9,000 names. Someone in the Galactic press identified what she was reading and put it in the headline. The story spread. The footage spread. By the time Drev saw it, approximately 400 million sentient beings across the galaxy had also seen it. No one had asked her to read those names. No protocol required it. There was no audience for it, no ceremony, no political benefit. She did it in private in what she apparently believed was an unobserved moment, and she did it the way someone does a thing they believe in, which is slowly and completely and without looking for credit. Drev watched the footage and felt, for the first time in his long political career, something he did not have a word for. It was adjacent to shame, but it was bigger than shame. It was the feeling of having done something, and then watching the full weight of what that something actually meant arrive in a form you could not argue with or file a counterclaim against or root into administrative review. He resigned from the Hikari observer position the following morning. In his letter, he said that he no longer felt he could adequately represent his government's interests in the current environment. This was true, but it was not the whole truth. The whole truth was that he had watched an admiral read 9,000 names because she thought someone should, and he had understood, looking at that footage, that the 9,000 names were the point, had always been the point, and that for the last 2 weeks he had been constructing elaborate arguments around the edges of the point as if the point were not there. The whole truth was he could not do that anymore. At the Galactic Council, the session that convened after Wolf's fleet began its journey home was the strangest session in recent memory. Not because of the arguments, because of the silences between the arguments. Speaker Hale had been in her position for 11 years, and she had never seen the chamber quiet the way it was quiet that week. Not the quiet of boredom or fatigue. The quiet of reconsideration. Species that had been loudly aligned one way were now loudly aligned a slightly different way, and the noise of realigning was doing something interesting to the usual shape of council debate. 3 species that had strong economic relationships with the Hikari had submitted written statements distancing themselves from the Hikari position on Vega Colony 7. Carefully worded statements, diplomatic language, but the direction was clear. A delegate from the Pharaon species, who had 17 active colonial settlements of their own and had been watching the whole affair with particular attention, stood up and gave a speech that no one had expected. He said his people had settlements on 4 moons and 2 orbital platforms in corridors that multiple larger species had expressed interest in over the years. He said his people had always assumed the Council's framework was their protection. He said that Vega Colony 7 had been in a Council-registered development zone, and the Council had processed the mining claim without a single question. He said he was not criticizing Earth's response. He said he was asking the Council to look honestly at what Earth's response was a response to, which was the Council's failure to be the thing it claimed to be. The chamber did not erupt. It absorbed the speech in that heavy, reconfiguring quiet. Petra Luz was approached after the session by 4 different delegates in the space of 20 minutes. Each of them wanted to discuss something different: trade terms, scientific exchange, navigation rights, mutual assistance language. None of them mentioned the fleet directly. They didn't need to. She met with each one and took notes and was polite, and said that Earth would consider everything carefully. When they were all done, she found a quiet corner of the station's observation deck and sat by herself for a while. Below her, through the viewport, stars moved past in slow silence. She was thinking about Lieutenant Don Ferris, who had filed 37 pages of documentation on the Vega Colony 7 site, and who had stayed at those coordinates for 4 days because he thought someone should be watching. She thought a lot of things in that war had been done by people who thought someone should. Someone should read the names. Someone should watch the site. Someone should sit in this chamber and say exactly the right number of words at exactly the right moment. She did not think of it as heroism. She thought of it as a form of stubbornness, the particular human refusal to let something be nothing just because it was inconvenient to let it be something. She sat there for a long time. Then she went back to her office and answered her messages. There were more of them than there had been last week. There would be more still next week. The galaxy was recalibrating, and it was doing it one quiet conversation at a time. She did not mind the work. The Galactic Council passed the Colonial Protection Accord in 23 days. It was not a perfect document. No document that 46 species argued over for 3 weeks was going to be perfect. There were compromises in it that made Petra Luz press her lips together when she read them. There were clauses that were weaker than they should have been, and definitions that were broader than she would have liked, and enforcement mechanisms that relied, in the end, on the willingness of member species to act, which was the same thing every council document relied on, and which had always been, in her assessment, the fundamental structural weakness of the whole institution. But it was real. It had real protections in it that had not existed before, and it had passed with 41 votes, which was more than any contested resolution had received in a decade. She signed it. She signed it in the same room where she had watched Drev present the Hikari mining claim 3 weeks earlier, at the same table, in the same chair. She did not think about that in any dramatic way. She just noticed it. Wolf's fleet came home on a Thursday. There was a formal arrival ceremony scheduled. Wolf canceled it. She sent a message to the ceremony coordinators that said the crew needed rest and that a ceremony could wait. And if they felt a ceremony was essential, she requested it be scheduled for at least 3 weeks out so that every crew member could attend properly rather than stumbling off a ship and standing in a dress uniform they had not slept in yet. The ceremony was scheduled for 3 weeks out. In the meantime, the crews went home. Wes went home to his apartment, which had a plant in it that he had been half sure would be dead. It was not dead. His neighbor had watered it. He stood in his apartment for a while looking at the plant and then sat down on his couch and did not move for several hours. Wolf went to her office and spent 2 days filing the complete operational report. She filed it with the same careful precision she applied to everything. Every decision documented, every engagement accounted for, every casualty on both sides recorded with full detail. She had a policy about operational reports. They should be honest enough that someone reading them 100 years later could understand exactly what happened and why. She had a second policy, which was that operational reports should include the names of every crew member lost, not a number, names. She wrote those sections last. When she was done, she sat with the finished report for a moment before transmitting it. It was long, detailed, honest about the things that had gone well and honest about the things that had not. She had lost 3 ships and 29 crew. She had also conducted every action within the parameters she had set herself. No civilian casualties, no unwarned strikes, no unnecessary destruction. She did not feel good about any of it. She had not expected to feel good about it. She felt that it had been necessary and that she had done it as well as it could be done, and those were 2 different things from feeling good, and she had learned a long time ago not to confuse them. She transmitted the report and went home. Lieutenant Don Ferris was reassigned to a desk position for a month on the recommendation of the medical officer who had seen his evaluation when he landed. He did not argue. He went to the desk and did his desk work and went home every night and slept badly and woke up and went back to the desk. At the end of the month, he submitted a request to return to field survey work. It was approved. He was assigned a new mapping route in a sector he had never been to. On his first day out, when his ship cleared the last navigation buoy and open space opened up in front of him, he sat in his cockpit for a moment and looked at it. The stars, the dark, the ordinary enormous silence. He thought about Vega Colony 7. He thought about it the way he suspected he would always think about it, not constantly but present, the way a scar is present. You do not always feel it, but it is always there, and sometimes your hand goes to it without thinking. He thought about the school. He thought about the bar where the night shift argued about sports. He thought about the medical clinic with its new equipment that no one had gotten to use. Then he set his heading and started his survey. He did his job carefully, the same way he always had, and when he found something interesting, he documented it thoroughly and sent his reports back and moved on to the next coordinate. Somewhere across the galaxy, in 47 different archives, his original report from Vega Colony 7 was filed. In political research offices and military review boards and institutional libraries and private collections, filed and indexed and retrievable. 9,218 names. The Council Accord had a clause in it, added late in the negotiations by the Pharaon delegate, that all documented civilian casualty events would be entered into a shared public memorial archive accessible to any council member species. Vega Colony 7 was the first entry. The archive was added to over the following years. Other events, other names, some from before the Accord, entered retroactively by species who had decided that their silence about those events had gone on long enough. The archive had a simple interface. You could search by name, by location, by date. There was no editorial commentary, no political framing, just names and places and dates. People visited it. Not as many people as should have, but people did visit it from species across the galaxy, and they stayed longer than anyone had predicted they would, and they came back, and sometimes they brought others. That was not nothing. It was, in fact, the whole point.